We are on our way once again to Khatarshnong area, the organic capital of the Khasi Jaintia Hills. Its remoteness has in a way protected this pristine landscape from the ravages of any form of unplanned development that has spoiled the beauty of many of our rural landscape. This is not the last trip that we will be making to the cluster of 47 odd villages, and this time we are visiting the remotest and one of the last villages in the Khatarshnong area. Mawbawein is a village located deep in one of the valleys near the river Sohra, and it is known for its betel nut and betel leaf besides the other crops and fruits that grow abundantly in Khararshnong. We pass through the Mawjrong highland and soon drive through the now familiar terrain along the ridges of this mountainous region. It was a sunny day and we were told that the village Mawbawein would be very hot. The heat will affect our trek to the destination as we prepare our water supplies to counter the heat and the arduous trek. Our guide told us that it was going to be some 1.5 hours walking down to the village below. How long the trek took us and what we encountered was another story altogether. A departure from all the treks that we had made in the recent past. We passed through Nongba Mawshud and headed southwest to Padang village, located on a narrow ridge before the steep descent to our destination.
We are passing through this 14 households in Padang village. This episode of A Day in the Village will be basically a journey through these small hamlets.
Padang has 14 households of farmer cultivators. The houses are mostly small tin-roofed huts made from wood and bamboo with walls of corrugated sheets. It's basically a base camp for the cultivators who have their cultivated fields on the slopes of the mountains and the valleys below. As time passed, the base camp evolved into a small settlement when more farmers and relatives decided to settle there. It does not have the amenities of the bigger villages like lower primary schools or electricity. Solar lamps are used. There is no presence of a church as we encountered in the other much older villages. Apparently, Padang has been around for 20 years and probably in course of time, if the village expands demographically, it will include more amenities and social institutions. From a bird's eye view, the village sits on a narrow strip, a ridge like a railway track with steep slopes on both sides. The unique landscape, a contrast of sorts, reveals from above a thick tropical forest on the east and on the left side of the ridge, untouched and uncultivated, while to the west, the slope on the right is cultivated and covered in broom grass. Padang is a fine example of the tenacity and hardiness of the people who inhabit this rugged terrain, who need just around 25 feet of land across on a mountain ridge to build their homes and start a family. It is in their DNA to live and thrive in this type of difficult landscape. Broom grass is the main source of livelihood in these hamlets and in most of the villages in the Khatarshnong area. Beekeeping is another activity which the people here engage in. We pass by some interesting sight as a wasp tries to prey upon a beehive. The bees are grouped together in a defensive position to thwart the predator wasp from carrying away one of their own. It's a rare sight, and we stopped for some time to watch the spectacle. By the time we left the spot, the wasp was still hovering around, waiting for the right moment to strike. We left Padang village and descended a steep, narrow stone path that cut across broom grass country. A lot of vegetation has covered the trail. It's a track that is not often used, and at places it was very steep and slippery. We soon passed by an arecanut grove, an orange orchard with a mix of bay leaf and jackfruit trees which grow aplenty in this patch of land.
I'm walking across this orange orchard. This is the place called La'a. And in winter, you can imagine this place. It'll be so colorful, full of oranges. Right now they're green. But we are 40% of the distance covered to Mawbawein. And this is a pleasant walk.
It's still a long way to Mawbawein, and it seemed that our guide's sense of timing was turning out to be misleading, to say the least. After an hour's walk, the village seen from a distance did not seem to be anywhere near. Along the way, we got a taste of some of the nuts that were often eaten as snacks here. The heat was getting to us, and we rested for some time in the cool shade of some trees and the shadow of a farmer's shack. This was beetle leaf and spice country. The beetle leaves are big sized, and the peppercorn thrives in these slopes and valleys. As the sun saps our strength slowly and steadily, we trudged on down the steep track, resting at intervals. It was getting very hot, and we were all sweating profusely, our t-shirts all soaked to the brim. At last, cool waters from a small stream to give us some respite from the unrelenting heat. I could not resist the temptation of sitting in the cool, refreshing waters. We were nearing a destination as we started the climb up to Mawbawein. Slow and steady wins the race. It took us almost 2.5 hours by the time we reached the village, and our energies were almost exhausted. Mawbawein, surrounded by a lush green ecosystem, a mix of forest and betelnut trees, bananas, oranges. It sat some 200 meters above the river Sohra. It probably is a few hundred meters above sea level, which explains the heat.
So we've finally reached Mawbawein. Our guide told us it was 1.5 hours walk, but it's much, much further than that. 2.5 hours of walking has drained us of our energy, and the heat here is it's really hot. 47 household village, about 200 people living here, and most of them have to walk around 4 hours to 5 hours to drop their loads of produce, about 40 to 50 kgs on their back, all the way to Sohra, where the station is. So it's a hard life living here, and we should not be complaining, because these people live with this load day in, day out.
Most of them were farmer cultivators, a simple, honest people who welcomed us warmly with their kindness and hospitality. Cut off from the rest of the world, Mawbawein is the last village in South Khatarshnong. There are no more villages further downstream. It was a long way here. We were tired, but at the same time refreshed by the surroundings. Some semblance of government intervention is seen in the village footpath, constructed under the Enrega scheme, and a SSA lower primary school. The whole village uses solar power for lighting. We explore the surrounding areas walking down to the river below. I was in my shorts as they made walking much easier. Plus the heat was getting uncomfortable. Then there was the upcoming trek uphill, which all of us were dreading. It was a less than 10 minutes walk to the river, and we crossed a more than 100 meters footbridge to get a feel of the river and its surrounding area. The bridge is the only link to the outside world, and it is a vital piece of infrastructure for the people who stay in Mawbawein.
This is the Wachaka footbridge over the river Sohra. It is about 100 meters long and was built in 3,740 person days. It cost about 11,19,000. This is part of the Community and Rural Development Block Enrega scheme of Khatarshnong.
The villagers live off the land, are hard-working and enterprising. They do not use the trail that brought us here from Padang anymore. Their only access to the markets and towns is via Sohra, some 3 to 4 hours walk uphill across the river Sohra. The buses and taxis are available at Sohra village, which is in the western Khatarshnong area and much closer to Cherrapunji. It's a beautiful landscape, and a trek from Sohra to Mawbawein is worth it. A tough one, but enjoyable. It is also an angler's paradise, and there are plenty of fishes in the river. The river Sohra at this juncture is fast and swift. We leave the riverside with a lot of thoughts, wondering how the lives of these villagers would be transformed if motorable roads were made for them up to this bridge, if not to the village. The economy of the village would improve as more crops and produce get transported, saving a lot of time and man hours. Subsequently, with more income to spare, there will be enough to support education for the youth and bring about a positive change in the village community. Roads are game changers and undeniably the most important asset for remote farming communities and villages like Mawbawein. At the village, our host offered us a bowl of rice and tea, which kind of restored our energy and strength. It was a rare act of kindness, which was also a part of the culture of many villages in the Khatarshnong area.
So after that long walk, we finally come back to the village Mawbawein, and the people are so hospitable. They've given us this cup of tea and bowl of rice, which will give us back our energy. These are the perks of coming to villages, remote villages in Meghalaya, where hospitality is always there. And we are fortunate to have these people, these kind people with us.
We left Mawbawein feeling adequate and ready. Our energies restored after the meal. We were up to the challenge of climbing the monster of a mountain to get back to base camp. A cemented flight of steps were the starting point from where we started our unknown uphill journey. A safe return depended solely on our guide, Bart Lucas. This time round, we were quite sure that it would take us a lot more time to get back home. Go slow is the mantra. About half an hour's trek, we came upon an ingenious tracking method used by the villagers. On the surface of a piece of flat rock was some crushed crab shell and flesh, which were used as a lure for bees and wasps. The bees that ate the remains and flew back to their hives would then be tracked by the villagers all the way by following the flight pattern back to the honeycomb. An ingenious method, but we did not wait till the end, and we headed back to a feast that awaited us in Nongbak Moshut. It took us more than 3.5 hours of grueling, torturous trek to reach our base camp. When we reached the village, we changed our soaked in sweat clothes and proceeded to the kitchen, where the food preparation were in full swing. Millet was being crushed in between a base and a rotating upper stone. The crushed millet was added to a pot of cooked rice and mixed together. The other dish was dried yam, crushed to be added later to a dish.
So one thing about Khatarshnong is they have their own food culture. You've seen the way they make the millet, they crush it, and the yam, the dried yam. But a surprise for us was this. This is the larva of a beetle, this beetle, which is found in the talai tree. This is harvested from the decomposed wood of the talai tree. And you have this larva, which is apparently very delicious.
The larva of the beetle is washed and fried in a pan where onions, turmeric and salt are added. The fat from the larva actually cooks the larva. This is an important source of protein to the villagers, while to us outsiders, it's an exotic delicacy, although there were few takers when it came to eating the larvae.
So the people here, when it rains cats and dogs in Khararshnong, they spend their time mostly in weaving. Basketry is one of the crafts here in Khatarshnong. And we're going to show you some of this expert skills to be practiced now. So what this man is doing, he is going to weave a cover for this handle of this small dhow. This dhow is used in everyday work, daily use. And this is an essential item, essential tool of the people in villages here in Khararshnong.
The skill of weaving with their hands is passed on from one generation to another and takes years of practice to perfect the art. The loss of these age-old traditions is something which may happen if most of the younger generation are given to changing their professions and lifestyle. Meanwhile, the crushed dried seeds of the jackfruit are pressure cooked and then poured to a pan of fried onions. A few dried chilies to give some spice to the dish is added. The next item is a surprise and a delicacy to the locals here.
So another item of food from Khararshnong. We present to you a rodent. It's called nai-or in the local language. And this rodent eats only fruits and vegetables. And what they do is they trap this rodent in bamboo cages. And this is again another delicacy, one of the sources of protein here. This is meat which is smoked, and this is a fine example of slow food, organic food here in Khatarshnong. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to make this curry. Here we have crushed pepper, garlic and bay leaf. Okay, so we've put some mustard oil on the fire, and she's going to put in some onions. Basically, so mustard oil basically adds to the flavor, and the aroma that comes out of the mustard oil is excellent. So she's going to put in some turmeric, and this turmeric is homegrown. This is a product of Khararshnong. So everything is like homegrown, organic, and cooking with firewood, the food tastes much, much better. Crushed pepper, and last of all they add the meat. It's important that after the frying of the meat, she adds water, and we'll leave it for some time for the meat to cook.
The other dish, a salad made from the cooked flour of the banana, mixed with crushed sesame seeds, some onions and chilies.
So we have the final product of the dishes that have been prepared here, and what we have here is the jaying and rice, which has been cooked together. Jaying is a vegetable which is similar to the mustard family, and I can assure you this is very delicious. We have this is the seed of the jackfruit, which has been dried and pressurized, put on the pressure cooker and cooked, and later on added and fried in oil and onions and some spices. Here we have the larva of the beetle, which is another delicacy which looks really good to eat, but not many people will eat this, but we are going to try this for sure. And this is the millet and rice, which is in the local language jakrai. This is very rich in iron, and millet used to be the staple here in Khatarshnong. This is jale, which is used as a leaf which is kind of it's tasteless actually, but has a certain aroma and goes very well with rice. This is the smoked meat of the rodent, which has been fried, and this also I'm looking forward to eating it. And last but not least is the flour of the banana, and this has been mixed with sesame seeds and this is something which is quite common in the Khasi Hills, but the way it's prepared here is different, and I can really imagine that this food is really exotic. This is slow food, organic food, healthy food, and if you want to taste this kind of food, you have to come to Khararshnong.
Mawbawein has left an indelible impression in our minds. The rustic charm, its greenery and pristine environment, together with their hospitality, is something to remind us of how a journey like this can unite us and the villagers better, and how making new friends and sharing our food and culture makes our world a better place to live in.